Okay, so um, I believe the film doesn't answer truly what reparations should look like, but it definitely shows us what we don't want it to look like. So let's start from there. And so Priscilla, if you can move to the next slide. Um, so just to give like a baseline understanding across the board, reparations is not exclusive to African Americans, descendants of slaves. It's really for any group that a crime has been committed against them. And it's a sort of restitution for that crime. And so if you think about it in that framework, there are plenty of claims to reparations from plenty of different communities outside of the Black community. And so just wanting to make sure that baseline understanding, because Black people do talk about it a lot, but it's not just a Black person thing. And next slide. So a main theme in the film is Black capitalism. I think that it's really personified through Ellington's character as she gets her check. She finds a way to get Brody to help her with her small business. She wants to use his money too. And I think that what we wanted to really show here was just, it's exploitative in nature, like capitalism, no matter if it's capitalism or Black capitalism, it's going to be exploitative in nature. And a lot of talk around reparations is often around entrepreneurship. And I know like this past, in 2020, you probably heard a lot of people talking about buy Black and invest in Black banks and all sorts of stuff. And these are not like true fixes to the system. It's really, band-aids, if you even want to call it that. But, these are just things that a lot of people will repeat and parrot. But at the end of the day, we're fighting against this larger beast of capitalism. And so trying to replicate that and believing that is our way out and our way to liberation is, a little bit, I guess, incomplete in its analysis. But yeah, just wanted to point that out. And next slide. The question of who gets a check is often coming up. And I think that in the film, we did point out people who didn't receive a check because when reparations is talked about, often people will just say exclusively descendants of American slaves. And, when we want to talk about slavery, it's really not just America. It was definitely a global event. And also who is Black. And I think once you get into the minutia of that, it really just becomes like, a conversation that, that you didn't want to get in the first place. But I think that we don't want to exclude people. There's a lot of people who are Black and might not be descendants of slaves in America, but have come from other countries, we're descendants of slaves in other countries as well, or even are like currently in our ICE detention centers. Like the majority of people in ICE detention are Black people from other countries. And so, that would be a rightful claim to reparations in itself, just, people who are in ICE detention. And so, where we can find avenues to point out wrongs that have been committed against people, then we can start to build a framework around what reparations should look like. And next slide. And so I touched upon this a little bit. Slavery was a global event, so we have to think about reparations from a global perspective, and to undo the effects of colonialism that were, reaped upon Black communities, Indigenous communities all across the globe. And so, I think that puts it in a better framework for me as a Pan-African, but I also feel like I wish that more discourse framed reparations in this light as well. And then next slide. Okay, so HR 40 is like the mother of all bills that never goes anywhere, but it is like the main reparations bill that currently exists on the national stage. No movement, so it was reintroduced in 2019. I think it was first introduced in the 1980s, and it's just a commission to study or research reparations, and it can't even get passed. But in California, we have Assembly Bill 3121, which is essentially the same thing as HR 40. And that did get passed in 2020. So that's like super exciting. So hopefully we'll see some movement on that in the future. outside of that, you know, I have Rosewood, Florida, Asheville, North Carolina, and Tulsa, Oklahoma on here. These are all places where reparations has been fought for and won, or is currently being implemented, or there are active lawsuits, open cases around reparations. So we're kind of seeing, you know, little fires sparking up everywhere. And I think that it seems like the cards are falling finally. So I don't want to get in deep because we want to get to Q&A, but I just wanted to list those in case you wanted to check it out after. Cool. Okay, so here are some takeaway questions, and we'll just leave them up for the Q&A. So if you have any additional questions about the film, please put it in the Q&A chat and we will answer them. Thanks.
Awesome. So thank you, Simone. Let's get into the Q&A. I see some of you are already putting questions in the chat now. I mean, excuse me, in the Q&A box now. For those of you who want to ask a question, click on the Q&A button on the bottom, type your question, and we will make sure and ask the panelists. So somebody says, with reparations going towards student debt, medical debt, and other basic living expenses, do you think there could ever be meaningful reparations under capitalism? That's our first question.
Sure, I guess I'll take it first. In my opinion, like reparations absolutely kind of encompasses what we as democratic socialists want. We want debt taken care of. We want things like free college. We want things like free healthcare. It's kind of a fundamental change to society, and that's that opinion has been formed over the course of making this short as well. When it comes to just like a sum of money on top of that, I mean, it'd be nice. It's a very difficult question to answer, but when you look at things that would fundamentally change people's life, it's like that's kind of the main point of the short, is that just like a lump sum of money is not enough to guarantee long-term social change, not enough to guarantee security. It's not enough to really change people's life. I mean, there's extraordinary examples for sure, but that's also kind of the capitalist mindset of just like, if you hustle with what you got, then you can like expand on that. And that's really not the form we're looking for reparations to take. I mean, this is all hypothetical, but we want people's baseline lives to get better. I personally, if we could have free healthcare and free education for people, I wouldn't even care about what would happen past then. That would be my wildest imaginations coming true. I hope that answers a question. If anyone else wants to talk about that, feel free to.
Yeah, just to build on that really quickly, I just think that what we're looking for is more equity, um, and that has been taken away from us for so long. And so I think like with the things that Brody is talking about that we would like to see happen, that would open the door for more equity, and less like systematic racism. And that's kind of like would be definitely pointed in the direction of reparations in my mind. And that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah. I will say, just like my reactions to seeing this short over and over again over the past like year or something, like we made this before the pandemic happened. We made this before we all got sent $600 checks, $1,800 checks or less than that. So the level of condescension that we've seen from the government has honestly eclipse what was in our imagination. But every time I see the short, that's how I feel about it. I was just like, oh, okay, cool. We did get checks and they were really, really low. Okay.
Yeah, and back to the question, like, we live under a racial capitalism, so of course, like, we do want to see, like, the closing of the racial wealth gap. Of course, we like. I don't believe that we're going to be able to see a community of people be able to just pull themselves up after being exploited, after uh, redlining, after everything that has been committed against the Black community. But in everyone else's point, yes, like the Rosewood, Florida example, that was a massacre just like Tulsa, happened 2 years after Tulsa. And 9 survivors were given like $150,000. But of course, once they got that money, they were kicked off of Medicaid. And so, like, when we don't have other universal programs like in place, of course, the first people that are going to be affected are the most vulnerable. And so, you know, people who are working class, and we want to make sure that in addition to reparations, because the point of it is to right a wrong, you know, against a crime that's been committed. But in addition, we do want to see universal programs because, you know, the stratification of society will persist unless we intervene.
Thank you. Somebody wants to know, how did you all come up with the number 16,000?
$16,000 was, I read a statistic from, I think that the average family wealth, I think this is also a little bit in the short, but the average family wealth for a Black family is around like $16,000, which I think since like 1983 or something, only increased like something like 10 to like 20%. And for the average like white household family, it was something like 130%. I'm sure I'm fudging those numbers, but that number was basically that exact gap, and we tried to incorporate that into the short.
Yeah, I also stumbled across like a New York Times article that was trying to like calculate the numbers, but it was very like all over the place. And I did see numbers like below $16,000. And I'm just like, wow, like just even the idea that it could be that low, like because I don't know, whatever justification was made, like how far away from slavery we are and like, you know, how much each descendant should really get. Like once you start like calculating that and it's something as little as that, like what's the point, you know? I think, you know, it just, yeah, it's a little frustrating. I hope that whenever we see reparations happen, that it's actually like structural change, you know, because as you saw in the film, it's just, it's depressing when you see like how a low amount of money can literally do nothing for you in your community.
So somebody asked, when you talk about global reparations, is this in the spirit of a Trotskyist, or excuse me, a Trotskyite transitional demand, or do you really think that can happen without destroying capitalism altogether?
Well, I'll say it has happened with that. Like there have been rightful claims to reparations for other groups of people under capitalism. And so in that regard, yes, it's possible. Will it look like exactly what we want it to be? That's still, you know, up in the air. So I would just say, yes, it's possible. Native peoples in this country have received many, many checks. It did not repair their community, but you know, we see how that plays out and hopefully we can learn from it as well.
Cool. So somebody says, should a truth commission go first before reparations to correct history and acknowledge the horrors of slavery and everything that followed and the travesty of how history is told? Do you all believe that this commission should go first?
Do you want to take that one?
What was, can I read that one? That was
Sure. It's from Deborah. She says, should a truth commission go first before reparations to correct history and acknowledge the horrors of slavery?
I think the truth is out there, but like HR 40, it is a commission, and what happens with a lot of these commissions is that they'll take like 20 years to basically say everything that we already know. And so like that, there's problems with that, of course, because it prolongs the actual materialization of getting reparations. In California, though, like they're doing pretty much the same thing. I hope it's not a 20-year thing as well, but descendants of slaves know the history. So it's, you know, when we're playing catch up with folks, I feel like it's just buying time sometimes, or it's an excuse sometimes.
Yeah, we wrote this short kind of as a reaction to during the primaries where a lot of Democrats were talking about reparations really as like a lip service. And we realized that like we are at the point where we're still trying to get like the average American populace to just agree that we should have reparations in the first place. And then after that, there's a couple more steps. We have to talk about how it's going to be implemented in the first place. People have to get past step one to even get into like the real muss and the mess. So that's like that was the impetus of our short, was to just like, let's get past step one. Let's have the government just have the attitude of just like, let's get it over with. Let's toss them an option. Let's not even discuss it. But like, that's where we wanted to start the conversation. So I'm in agreement with Simone. I think the faster an action happens. I mean, like it's the same thing with these COVID checks. We should have gotten them already. We should have gotten them every month. We should have gotten them retroactively. But we still have politicians who are like, oh, we're gonna wait till we're sworn in, till we're gonna get us 2,000 checks. Oh, now they're $1,400 and blah blah blah. Bureaucracy has never been a friend of freedom. So, yeah.
Someone says, can you explain the scene where Brody's character says going to college was the worst decision he ever made? I really love that. Besides free higher ed, what other changes would we like to see, you know, for reparations?
Yeah, that one came from the heart. All of my friends who went to college, I mean, like, especially when you're in a millennial generation, I'm 33 for the record. All of them are in debt, or at least most of them. I was lucky enough to go to community college before I went to real college, and that was honestly the smartest decision of my life, just to save myself from being further in the hole. And I work in the entertainment industry also, and once you get past, depending on what you're trying to do, a degree doesn't mean anything. So that's kind of like where I was coming from that. Yeah.
Cool. Somebody asked, was the anti-capitalist performance art that Ellington's character made fun of based on an actual performance that Brody or someone else did?
My whole comedy career, yeah.
No, I don't think so. I did. I also went to college. I'm also in debt from college. And I did think about going to graduate school at one point for performance art. And I'm so glad that I did not do that. But it would have probably been something along those lines. I think that joke comes from something that could have happened or may happen in the future.
Yeah.
Awesome. One person asked, should land or resource access be part of reparations? And if so, how can this be reconciled with fights for indigenous sovereignty and land back movements?
That's a good question.
Yeah, this has come up before, and I'm glad it keeps coming up because yes, land has to be a part of it, but we also have to make space and like make sure that we're not also taking land, you know, as the colonizers have done. And so I think it's just the start of a conversation, you know, and once that conversation starts, then hopefully it can go somewhere. But I wouldn't say that it can be like should be eliminated from what we should be demanding. It's just we have to partner with Native people to make sure that we're not taking their land also. And we're stolen people on stolen land. So we're in a bit of a precarious situation.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of attention during like the festival circuit, so we're trying to go on to next steps of like developing this into a bigger idea. Maybe it's a TV show, and just considering the themes that we're tackling here, like that is absolutely a theme that we want to continue to go forward and tackle. Like if we can live in this fantastical world where Black people get reparations, why can't Native Americans get land and reparations as well too? So we believe that is part of the conversation. We just focus on Black people because we are Black, but definitely two sides of the same coin for sure.
Someone asked, what are y'all's thoughts on demanding reparations for more recent crimes against Black people, like the Jim Crow laws, redlining, or the war on drugs?
That's a great question. And I don't want to like bogart the discussion or anything, but like the sooner we as a country can accept the fact that reparations are our moral imperative to do, we can be looking at reparations for just the last year. I Everyone I know deserves reparations at this point, just because of the mass mishandling of the COVID pandemic. So I am very much not against tackling things like Jim Crow exactly the same.
And I
Um,
think all of those like programs, and then on top of that, systemic racism stems out of slavery, America, like African slavery in America. So I think that those all end up tying together. And again, we kind of touched on this in the film, but it's hard to think about um, reparations like a monetary amount only going to people that can like that come from like the African slave trade in America. Like that just doesn't really make sense in terms of like the way that our country has like really like has been steeped in like racism for so long, and how like the color of your skin impacts the way that you are treated on a daily basis in this country.
Yeah, we definitely have to expand beyond slavery. And, you know, obviously that's the common denominator that everyone wants to go back to. But it seems like that is the more difficult one to get reparations for because of how wide sweeping it would be. But where we are seeing smaller claims to reparations, like people can actually probably get it. And so I'm all for backing, you know, campaigns around getting reparations for different crimes that have been committed against the community for sure.
Someone says, number one, smart and hilarious as AF. So well done. Thank you all for your work. And number two, what would reparations look like in your mind, in your wildest dreams, in your wildest imagination, if we try to adopt an approach of redistributing capital and power and means of production? Tell us what your fantasy is.
I mean, for my comedy brain, I want like a 90% discount on like everything. Like I walk into any store, it's just like, here you
Reparations.
go. That'd be pretty cool. Yeah, like I just want like a platinum card, but it's like a black card, and I just swipe it and they're just like, oh, it's free, don't even trip. And I'm like, oh, okay, great. Um, yeah, and first of all, thank you so much for liking it. We're really glad that you're all here to watch it. It's been like a huge bummer for us personally not to be able to um, discuss this with people in person. Huge bummer, but
Yeah,
yeah.
no, it really has been like And I know all of us, we're really excited to do this movie on reparations because it's all just like been talked about at the like family dinner table like for so long. Like it's just like up so like infused in our culture, and then like to be able to make a film about it, to like see it on the screen and like really have like all of our friends in it, and to try and make it as funny as possible and like see it through this lens, has been just like a really wonderful experience for me.
And what kind of stuff do you want, Ellington?
Um,
Do you want a jacuzzi?
yeah, no, I would like to see like the Freedmen's Bureau come back. Like I'd love like more black banks. I would just love for people to be able to get loans and low interest rates, and maybe like some housing subsidies. I think that I think like owning property is just like such an important thing to do in terms of like um, creating wealth for yourself and then for generations to come. And so, yeah, we've talked a lot about that. But I think that's the thing that I focus on a lot in my mind.
Yeah, it's like, it's also like, as a socialist, double-edged sword, because obviously like I don't believe in private property, but under capitalism, in order to like survive, people do need to build wealth, and like that is like the number one way to do it. And Black home ownership is like way down, and just in general, Black people are getting pushed out of their neighborhoods, getting gentrified, as are other communities as well. And I just feel like you know, I would want to see reparations be not just a check. I would want to make sure that people are going to be uplifted in every way that they can be. And that's also similar to our socialist demands of free healthcare, free education, everything. I mean, it has to be a redistribution of wealth for it to matter. And so yeah, so at the end of the day, like, I don't think anyone really has the true answer. We just know that we don't want it to be something that is so minuscule that it doesn't have an impact, and then also stokes more racial tensions because of that. Like, we also just want to be able to have people get some dignity, you know. I think that's like the core basis of it.
Cool. I'm gonna ask one more question. Somebody says this is the best indie film I've ever seen.
What a liar.
Can you talk about the process that it took to get this film up and running, and will you all do more work together like this in the future?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't know if we've like properly introed, but we're all involved in the comedy community here in LA, and we've all been friends for years, and we loved working with each other. This process was very, very fast. We came up with the idea. What month was it? Maybe like May or something?
I think it was like March of 2019.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm way
Yeah.
off. But by the time we knew what we wanted to talk about, which was very quickly, it was like one meeting, we knew that we were going to have to write it and shoot it very fast to submit to festivals. So we were like double time the whole time. Me and Ellington, we wrote it, we sent it to each other back and forth. Simone was story editing it. And we didn't have like the final draft when we were getting all the like crew and stuff together, but like we did right before shooting, and then we shot for about 4 days, and we fundraised. Oh man, boy, did we fundraise.
What Brody wanted to really say is he sent more pages like a day before we were shooting.
They were good.
But it's okay, because it actually fixed like a hole in the film, so that was good. So he saved the day. But yeah, it was very fast. But I think that sometimes that's a good way to get something done, and also I think that we all knew like there's a purpose, you know, behind it, and we all were kind of driven because of that to get it done. And and put everyone that we love in the film, which was really nice. And hopefully like we can look back and be like, hey, it's like all the people that, I mean, right now I haven't seen so many people because we usually would see each other at comedy shows. And so like seeing the film now or watching it now, I'm like, oh, it's like all the people that I'm wondering what they're up to because like I can't see them in real life. But it was really a great time to have everyone on set.
Yeah, pretty much everyone with a speaking role in it is a really funny comedian who you should look up to. Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, it was a good. It was like so hard. Fundraising is hard, and it's really bad. And I would.
That was the hardest part.
Yeah, crowdfunding is really tough.
Really fast, and it was like, but you know, once we got it all like shot, and like once I saw the first cut, I was like blown away. I was like, wow, this is really funny. Great, good job.
Shout out to Andrew Gust, who edited this, and he was totally into DSA too, so he gave us a discount. So he was like totally down. So yeah, I see a few people in the chat who may have missed the film today. You can watch it again in like a few weeks. We're gonna be at Slam Dance from February 12th through 25th. Festival pass, the whole festival is only $10, and there's plenty of like really cool films to check out. So I would point you in that direction because we're about to like wrap up our year-long festival run. So limited opportunity to see it again. But you know, we'll hold out hope. Maybe there will be a reunion at some point with the three of us to show it again.
So we have so many questions. People are disappointed because we didn't get to all of them. I wonder if you all mind doing a few more before we end.
Cool.
Okay. I don't want to. I want people to get their, you know, their questions out. Okay.
People can also like reach out to us.
Not me.
Here, we're like around. We have Instagrams. We're online.
Yeah, we're on Twitter.
Brody's on Twitter. I don't look at my Twitter. No.
Somebody asked, do you think the whole rhetoric of hope and you can achieve anything of Obama made kids get into more debt during his 8 years of presidency?
Oh man.
Yes, I almost went to graduate school for performance art.
I almost went to law school.
Yeah, short answer, yeah. I don't have a lot of nice things to say about Obama. I think I recently read that like Obama was our first Black president, but he wasn't our first pro-Black president. And, yeah, take that what you will. I don't know.
Someone asked, would reparations be better implemented as a recurring cash payment as opposed to a one-time payment? How do we feel about that?
Sounds like the lottery to me. I mean, the cash payment is the tip of the iceberg for me. Like I'm not thinking about it as that one thing. I would hope for more structural change. And so recurring, like it's like the same thing, right? They'd probably just split it up in like, instead of just giving you the one lump sum. So I might as well get the money in people's hands, you know. But on top of that, like that's just really not all that we're wanting here. And I think, you know, I don't know, like others agree, right? Like we saw what happened with just a check. It's just not good enough.
Yeah, shout out to Cobra and the work that they've done around reparations. We had a comrade on, but I lost you. So if you want to jump back on, I will definitely let you make your comments about reparations. Somebody asked, is building solidarity with people throughout the diaspora around a campaign for international reparations from nations who benefited from the slave trade something that has been tried before?
You know, if it has been tried, I would be really interested to read about that because to my knowledge, it hasn't. But why I put that in the deck is because during the whole George Floyd uprising, like the UN did have a convening about the treatment of African peoples in this country. And so in that regard, I'm like, you know, if we can band together with people all across the world, I think it does make a stronger case as well. And, you know, slavery in the United States was the smallest percentage of slavery overall. Like it was tiny in comparison to what happened in the Caribbean, and so in South America. And so, yes, we want to make sure that descendants of slaves all over actually get restitution for that from the original crime of slavery. But yeah, like we said earlier, there are other crimes that have been committed that we could pursue individual or as a country individually, I guess I will say.
So I did find the comrade from Cobra. Just go ahead, Jamoke. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. I'm going to turn you on to talk.
Greetings. Yeah, so and yes, you Bianca, you said my name correctly, Jamoke. Very good. Thank you. So yes, first of all, I did like the film. I enjoyed watching the film, and I've really enjoyed the conversation and the questions that have been following. I just wanted to put in a few little things, and I'll try to really keep it quick. I do think it's important to say that HR 40 has been making a lot of movement. I mean, we had a hearing in 2019 on HR 40. We have HR 40 now had 173 co-sponsors at the end of the last session. There's also a Senate version that Cory Booker introduced. And this year we started with original co-sponsors of 112 co-sponsors of HR 40. So I'm promising, I'm gonna go on record as saying there will be some traction on HR 40 in this legislative session in Congress. More traction than we've seen over the past years. Well, it's been a building momentum. We also have a lot of organizations that have gotten on board supporting us. ACLU, National Education Association, so many organizations have gotten on board. National Council of Churches have gotten on board to support HR 40. That's one comment I wanted to add in. One thing also I think about is important is that people have been saying that HR 40 is a study bill. And we rewrote the bill in 2017. So it's no longer just a study bill, it's a bill that actually calls for reparations proposals. Now, it does not mean that they will be funded, and so we'll take another set of legislation that actually funded, but it has moved from a study bill, and it is for 1 year. So it's not something that's going to be shouldn't be dragged out over a long period of time. I just wanted to put some of those things in. Also, you mentioned a couple incidences. I think that one of the some local reparations cases, and one good one to lift up would be Evanston, Illinois, where they're using the money from marijuana sales taxes to actually put money into a reparations fund in Evanston, and that's happening right now, as well as another one to lift up would be Chicago, has made progress around localizing reparations as well. And then the one last thing I'll just say, I don't want to take up too much time, is that one of the things that's important, I know you all talked a lot about structural change, is the United Nations 5 forms of reparations. And this is something that we really push hard now on in COBRA, and and I'll go over them briefly, but this is what the United Nations says reparations should look like. So we talk about cessation and non-repetition, the crime ending, so that we can say that things are still harming us now today that have to end. Those far-sweeping public policy structural changes that would have to happen. Restitution looks at our legal standing. Those people who want to repatriate, those people who want a sovereign nation state, those people who want to look at even our language and culture and all of that, recovering all of that comes under restitution. Rehabilitation looks at the psychosocial trauma that people have gone through. So all of the healing, emotional healing that we would have to deal with, mental health and all of those kinds of things would have to be addressed under rehabilitation. Compensation, and we don't dwell on that one so much. And then the last one is satisfaction. And satisfaction looks at the restoring the dignity of a people. So we're talking about museums, special days of commemoration, apologies, changing the narrative of how Black people have been portrayed in this country and our contributions to this country as well as our contributions to the world. So I'll end with that. And thank you for allowing me to share a little bit about reparations from the perspective of NCOBRA. And I just wanted to also say that, yeah, I would be interested, or we would be interested in finding out how we could access this film. So perhaps we could you know, have screenings of the film or set up some screenings with you all between now and this year sometime.
Awesome. I'm really happy that you spoke up because um, just being in the general public, like I don't know what's happening with HR 40. It's really exciting to hear that there is movement because that gives me hope and also hopefully like there's movement in California too. And I hope just to see it just be a more wide sweeping thing across the country, but that's like huge. So I'm really happy that you spoke up.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, so we have a couple more questions if you guys are cool with that. One of them is, as Black lefties, what do you think about pushing for reparations before something like Medicare for All, for instance? They're like, I'm not ADOS, but I wouldn't want my reparations going to healthcare, for instance. Do we feel like there's an order or there should be an order?
That's I mean, that's tough for me because healthcare is something I definitely want for the Black community and just for people in general. It's just kind of it doesn't matter when we get it. It's something that I want as soon as possible. Um, in like a realistic sense, in even a pessimistic sense, um, the fight for reparations is harder. We're talking about like a specific group talking about it. We're talking about I mean, we can't even get the police defunded yet. We're just we're out in the streets showing it bare. It's difficult. It's an uphill battle. I want either whenever we can get it, and hopefully either is as soon as possible. But I'm not going to look at Medicare for All as like taking away from reparations. I'm not going to look at any kind of social progress as taking away from another part of social progress. I'm not going to look at like UBI and say, oh, what if they raise rent? I'm going to be like, oh, well, we should have rent control too and UBI. Like, I think we could have all these things at once. And the order, it's a realistic thing, but I think once we start getting certain social demands met, I think it'll be easier to see the case for more of those demands being met. Hopefully, that's the optimist in me, actually.
Yeah, and I'd say like, you know, to get reparations for Black people, we will need allies in this fight too. And so I think the Black community has been advocating for themselves, you know, for hundreds of years, but it would really be nice if the broader left wanted to get behind a reparations campaign, make it as big as a Medicare for All campaign, because Medicare for All is definitely main stage. And I also I agree with Brody. I don't see one taking away from the other. In fact, like both would help Black people for sure. But, you know, like with the Medicare for All, even, I talk about this as well. Like it doesn't cure, you know, racial bias at the point of care. It doesn't fix the fact that there aren't hospitals in low income communities. Like, yes, like there are lots of things that we have to fix on top of just even getting a Medicare for All passed too, that that really will reveal the racial inequities in healthcare too. So reparations does go hand in hand, I would say.
The last question for real this time. Somebody says, I love the idea of this being a television show. How likely is that to happen? And can the panelists drop their Twitter handle so that we can follow?
If there's any industry in the chat, definitely more likely to happen. I guess I don't want to go into it like too much, but we're in like a pitching phase right now. We have spent a lot of the last year kind of like putting our ducks in a row. Ellington and Simone both are very smart people when it comes to trying to get things made in the industry. So we're doing our best, just like we did with our short. We're scrappy and we're seeing what we can do. But like just considering the conversation around Black Lives Matter in the last year, and considering how many more production companies are like willing to like listen to us, considering than even like 5 years ago or something, our chances are not bad. But yeah, we'll see. If anyone else wants
we're
to.
hoping for it. I mean, that's what we want.
Yeah.
That's what would be great. I mean, I love working with them, and like Brody and I I love acting. I don't really like think of myself as like being like super dedicated to acting or being on screen, and then I like work with someone who's like so amazing, like energy wise, like with Brody, and then I'm like, oh wait, like this is just it. When you're working with good people, it's just like, or like Simone directing us, like it just has a whole different feel and energy. And so like absolutely would love, I mean, yeah, I just all I can do is just work hard and try to make it a TV show. Yeah.
Twitter handles. Do you want to drop your Twitter handles in the chat, or say them right now so that people know how to follow you, your all in your work and your art?
Yeah, I can put it. I'll put mine in the chat. That's
cool.
The easiest.
Sure. Yeah, I guess we'll type it.
Cool. So look, and I also Jamoke was just put the information to follow and Cobra online so that we can follow the progress of HR 40 and hopefully find some ways to work together so that we can push this over the edge. And so look for that. They're going to just put their Twitter handles in the chat. And I'm afraid our time is up. I want to thank everybody who was involved in bringing this event together, our panelists, Ellington, Brody, and Simone, and as well as you, our audience, who will be receiving follow-up emails about upcoming events. Thank you for your great questions and comments. We've done this a couple of times now for the DSA, for AfroSoc, for HBCU network of the AfroSoc. So we may do it again in the future, so be on the lookout for that. Everyone who you can't see, Priscilla, Maddie for screening the film, thank you so much. And you all have a blessed MLK Day.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bianca. Thanks for being
thank you, Bianca.
Moderator once again.
And Jamoke too.
Jamaica.
Yes, thank you to Jamoke. Thank you to Cobra. Thank you all. Have a good night.